Under the burning Caribbean sun, the Venezuelan flag flutters above a nation on alert. From the capital, Caracas, to the coastal islands of the Caribbean, the sound of engines, boots and marching drums fills the air. Venezuela has launched one of the largest military exercises in its modern history. 200,000 soldiers, sailors and airmen mobilized across the country. The drills, announced by the Ministry of Defense, are not routine. They come at a moment of escalating tension with the United States, and the world is watching closely. In the skies above La Carlota Air Base, fighter jets slice through the haze as armoured columns roll across the tarmac. The government calls it a defensive readiness test, but the timing tells another story. Just days ago, the US aircraft carrier USS Gerald R entered the Caribbean, the same waters Venezuela calls part of its national security zone. The move triggered alarm in Caracas, where President Nicolás Maduro has repeatedly warned of imperialist threats against his country. Inside the control center of the Venezuelan armed forces, officers track every movement on giant digital maps. Television broadcasts show tanks maneuvering, artillery firing, and Marines disembarking on Isla de Margarita. The message is unmistakable. Venezuela is ready to fight if provoked. State media describes the operation as a show of unity and deterrence, while Western analysts see it as a calculated warning shot toward Washington. Across the Caribbean, American warships patrol international waters. President Donald Trump, now deep into his second term, has authorized what he calls anti-narcotics interdiction strikes. In early September, the US military confirmed it had destroyed several boats allegedly carrying drugs in the Pacific Ocean. The Pentagon says at least 76 people were killed in those operations, though no evidence has been presented publicly that the vessels were linked to trafficking. The Venezuelan government sees something far more sinister. In Caracas, Maduro accuses Washington of using counter-narcotics operations as cover for regime change. His words are fiery, echoing across national television. These are not law enforcement missions, he says. They are acts of war, illegal executions in international waters. He claims that US commanders and their allies are plotting to destabilize the country, targeting Venezuela's sovereignty and its socialist system. In Washington, President Trump denies the allegations, but adds his own provocation. Maduro's days are numbered. The remark reverberates through Latin America, interpreted by many as a direct threat of intervention. Regional governments remain divided. Some condemn Venezuela's militarization. Others warn the US against escalating tensions in an already fragile hemisphere. Back in Caracas, the streets pulse with patriotic music as television screens show footage of soldiers saluting beneath banners reading Defensa y Soberanía. Government commentators describe the drills as a message of dignity. For ordinary Venezuelans, the spectacle is both impressive and unsettling, a reminder of how far geopolitics can reach into everyday life. Power cuts still darken neighborhoods, food prices remain volatile, and yet the rhetoric of resistance fills the airwaves. On Isla de Margarita, thousands of troops conduct amphibious landings, practicing defenses against simulated foreign attacks. Drones hover overhead, capturing images for state television. Each maneuver is carefully choreographed, each speech carefully timed. This is not aggression, insists a military spokesman. It is preparation. But even allies admit the show of force is partly political, a bid to rally national pride as sanctions bite and economic pressures deepen. Across the ocean, US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth posts footage on his X account, videos showing explosions at sea, which he says are precision strikes against drug smuggling boats. The clips go viral, showing fiery impacts in the Pacific. Venezuelan officials claim they are proof of Washington's disregard for international law. Those are not smugglers, says a Venezuelan admiral on state television. They are fishermen, civilians, victims of a campaign of intimidation. Tensions climb further when, during a televised address from Miraflores Palace, President Maduro signs a sweeping suspension of an energy agreement with Trinidad and Tobago, a pact that once symbolized Caribbean cooperation. His voice, measured but defiant, fills the hall. I have approved the precautionary measure of immediately suspending all effects of the energy agreement and everything agreed upon in this matter. It is a precautionary measure that I have the authority to take as president, and I have approved and signed it. Everything is suspended. Then, in another striking declaration, he adds, "We have maintained this energy agreement, but given the Prime Minister's threat to turn Trinidad and Tobago into an aircraft carrier of the American empire against Venezuela and South America, There is only one alternative. The remark sends shockwaves through the region. The phrase, aircraft carrier of the empire, is replayed across Latin American media, a symbol of the widening rift between Caracas and its neighbors. Analysts say this new phase of confrontation marks the sharpest Venezuela-US standoff since the 2020s sanctions crisis. The massive drills, codenamed Operación Escudo Bolivariano, stretch from the Caribbean coast to the Andes, involving tanks, missile batteries and naval fleets. Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez declares that the country is ready to defend every inch of its territory. In the background, footage shows soldiers unfurling giant portraits of Hugo Chavez and Simón Bolívar, the revolutionary icons of Venezuelan nationalism. Throughout the exercise, state television VTV broadcasts a constant stream of patriotic messages interspersed with interviews of local commanders. "This is a test of our readiness, not a call to war," says one general, "but we will not kneel before foreign powers." Civilians are seen watching from rooftops, recording videos on their phones as fighter jets thunder overhead. The soundscape of Caracas, once defined by car horns and street vendors, is replaced by the rhythm of marching boots and the roar of engines. International observers warn that both sides are playing a dangerous game. The presence of the Gerald R. Ford carrier group in the Caribbean, complete with F-35 fighters and missile cruisers, is viewed by Washington as a projection of deterrence in Venezuela. It is framed as an invasion rehearsal. Diplomats from the European Union and the Organization of American States call for restraint, urging dialogue instead of display. But neither Caracas nor Washington seems ready to back down. In his latest statement, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo defends the naval deployment, saying it is aimed at disrupting narco-terror networks and ensuring regional stability. In Caracas, government spokesmen respond with fury, accusing Washington of hypocrisy. They say it's about drugs, says Foreign Minister Ivan Gil, but what they want is control of oil, of gas, of our independence. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan public endures the consequences. Fuel shortages worsen as international tankers hesitate to dock. Inflation ticks upward again, and the military's logistical demands drain civilian resources. Yet Maduro's approval ratings, paradoxically, rise. Analysts attribute the surge to a rally around the flag effect, the same psychological response seen in times of external threat. In the broader Latin American context, the standoff becomes a test of regional alignment. Colombia, under its new leadership, calls for regional peace through dialogue. Brazil issues a cautious statement urging both sides to respect sovereignty. Cuba and Nicaragua express full solidarity with Caracas, while Washington's traditional allies, Panama and the Dominican Republic, quietly support US maritime actions. The Caribbean, once seen as a zone of cooperation, now feels divided between competing spheres of influence. As the exercises continue, footage from military bases across Venezuela shows troops sleeping in open tents, rehearsing air defense maneuvers, and practicing urban combat. Propaganda posters depict US warships engulfed in flames, a reminder of how symbolic confrontation fuels domestic narrative. On social media, Venezuelan influencers amplify patriotic hashtags, while opposition figures accuse the government of hiding economic mismanagement behind the smoke of war. Yet even critics admit that the scale of the mobilization is unprecedented. 200,000 troops, the largest deployment since the 1990s, signal both a real defensive posture and a message to Washington. Venezuela will not be intimidated. The exercise ends each evening with the playing of the national anthem and the image of Maduro saluting the troops, a scene replayed again and again across state networks. From the perspective of global observers, the Venezuelan crisis is no longer just about ideology or oil. It is about sovereignty in an era of power projection. The Caribbean has become a stage for superpower messaging, American deterrence on one side, nationalist defiance on the other. In between lies the civilian population caught between sanctions, rhetoric, and rising militarization. As the sun sets over the Venezuelan coast, silhouettes of warships glimmer against the horizon. The sea remains calm, but beneath the surface, the currents of confrontation are strong. The world wonders whether these maneuvers are merely a show or a prelude to something far more dangerous. And in the presidential palace of Miraflores, Nicolás Maduro appears on television once more, his voice echoing with defiance. Venezuela will never surrender. We will stand firm with our dignity, with our people, with our homeland. The broadcast fades out on those words. A nation mobilized, a hemisphere tense, and a world uncertain where the next move will come from.